Yes, hi everyone. Let's start the class. लास्ट में क्या था? हाँ, एक सेकंड। एक सेकंड, 1858 में थे ना हम? We were okay. So we need to discuss the circumstances, right? So what were the circumstances during which the Government of India Act of 1858 came? See, it was not just this act, but along with it, there was also a proclamation. Okay. So that was Queen Victoria's proclamation. What does that mean? That actually means कि उस समय the Queen held declared a separate proclamation which was not actually having the backing of any law. It wasn't a law, but still it was a proclamation. But because the proclamation was on the part of the monarch, so it had, like, I would say, legal sanctions. Okay, not directly, but yes, indirectly. So now what happened was, what were the circumstances that basically compelled the government to basically come up with this bill, and that basically got enacted as a law, okay, in the Parliament of Britain. The circumstance was there used to be two bodies, as you know this very well. There used to be two bodies. What were those bodies? That was, one was Court of Directors and Board of Control, right? Now it was observed that between these two bodies, because this was actually the board of, like, Court of Director, wherein mostly who were there, they were the shareholders of the company. Although it was appointed by the crown, but they were the shareholders. They had company interest, they had profit seeking interest. Okay, and this was a regulatory body, right? This was a board of control. So both of their interests were different, and both of them used to frequently get into clashes. Okay, they were not working properly. Misrule was going on in India, and the highlights of this misrule was being there in Britain, okay, because that issue was being raised by several opposition parties in, basically, in the Parliament of London, right? Along with that, what was happening was, this year, actually, the year preceding this act in 1857, that year actually witnessed what? It witnessed a uprising. It was a Sepoy mutiny, and it was not just a Sepoy mutiny, but later on several different sections of the society. Mostly it was concentrated in North India only, but most of the sections participated in this mutiny, and later on it became a first war of independence. And this mutiny exposed the defects of the company rule. Okay, it brought to the limelight the defects that were being going on in the company's administration. Okay, so these were several reasons and the circumstances under which it was, like, Queen Victoria's proclamation also came, and this particular act also came. All right, so kya last point kya likha tha? What was the last point that I made you write? It was the heading only. Okay, so first, right, the year of, रुको, year of, तो छोड़ो वो, तो that intro तो लिख लिया ना, we have already written the intro, right? So intro के बाद में ये लिख लो, the board of control, right? Now you can shift to the phrases BOC and COD. Okay, the board of control and the court of directors remained a dual control at home, remained a dual control at home, and this led to the clashes between them. And this led to clashes between them. Okay, so there were several frequent clashes between them, right? So why are you all joining so late? It's already, I think, 2:05. Late नहीं किया करो भाई. Please don't always be late. तुम कोई ना कोई late ही आते हो. ठीक है. So next point, right? This clash was not conducive to the efficiency of administration. This clash was not conducive for the efficiency of the administration, and moreover resulted in unnecessary delays, and moreover was not conducive to the efficiency of the administration, and moreover resulted in several unnecessary delays. Next point, right? The mutiny of 1857. The mutiny of 1857 in India cautioned the British government to take over the administration, cautioned the British government to take over the administration, cautioned the British government to take over the administration of the East India Company by the Crown, of East India Company by the Crown. ठीक है. So one more factor was that यहाँ पर क्या हुआ कि industrial revolution and the idea of liberalism that was going on there in England, that actually changed the entire climate of Europe. Okay, not just Britain but also the entire Europe. So now the more sentiments in the Britain were favoring liberalism. Okay. Now, as I told you earlier also, now it was the peak of centralization. Now, after this act, decentralization got started. And yes, the real bolu, whether to call it real or not, that is also debatable. But some sort of on-ground real like integration of Indians in the administration got started after 1909 only. Okay. After this 1858, two more acts came, but still the real representation was lacking. Okay. But now after Morley-Minto reforms of 1909, some sort of actual representation of Indians started, but that was also symbolic only. Okay. Because they were not given the real power, because at the center there was no responsible government. But still, we can say that the peak of centralization until happened until 53. Then afterwards, after 58, what happened? Decentralization got started slowly. Okay. The one of the reason behind this was the growing value of liberalism there back in Europe. Okay. So write the next point. Right. The Industrial Revolution and liberalism in England. The Industrial Revolution and liberalism in England changed the atmosphere not only in home, but also in India. Okay. Now, see, the day-to-day
लास्ट वाली लाइन रिपीट कर दो.
हाँ यार तुम डरा क्यों रही हो? क्या बोले तुम?
एक बार लास्ट वाली लाइन रिपीट कर दो.
अच्छा ठीक है, एक अलार्म दे दिया करो. हाँ दीपांशु, अच्छा तुम दीपांशु आ क्यों नहीं रहे हो इतने दिन से? वेयर वर यू? विदुषी गुड आफ्टरनून. वेयर वर यू? हाँ भाई क्लास किया करो रेगुलरली. So see, now the thing was, because the day-to-day administration was actually in the hands of this body, right? And even this body also. Now, these two bodies were doing the administration, carrying out the administration there in India. And you know this, that there are no actual smooth line of communications at that time, way back in 1800s. There were no real-time communication updates that were happening between England and India. Okay. So it took some time to send the messages and to take the approvals and all. So it was stated that the day-to-day and every administration in India was being carried out by such bodies which are not responsible to the parliament in Britain. Okay. So that means a non-responsible administrative bodies were actually ruling in India, and that became the major reason why. What after like enacting this act, what happened was now these two bodies were abolished, and after which the administration of India was passed on into the hands of Secretary of State for India. And who was Secretary of State for India? He was a member of the Parliament, not even just the member, but the member of the government also, which means a cabinet member, Council of Minister member, who was responsible to the Parliament there. And even the governor general, not the governor, but the governor general was given an additional title. See, it is wrong that governor general post was abolished, and like I have heard people saying this, okay, the post of governor general was abolished and like later on viceroy came into existence. No, it doesn't happen like that. What was happened was the governor general was given a title, and what was the title? It was viceroy. Why the viceroy title was given to the governor general? So as to show this thing that now, earlier governor general was appointed, but now he is not appointed. He is a direct representative of crown in India. Okay, he is a direct. So this viceroy itself means that representative of crown. Okay, so now from now onwards, who is going to administer in India? So two people, one sitting there in London, and mostly the paperwork and everything what was used to happen in India, that now started being happening in London. Okay, and then in India, who was physically present to administer India, he was the viceroy. And who is viceroy? Viceroy is the direct representative of the crown in India. Right? Got the point? Okay. So write this thing. So last point क्या बताया? Yes, it changed the climate there, atmosphere and everything there, both in Britain and in India as well, right? Now you can write this thing also. It was realized that the chief functions in the government of India, were committed to a body not responsible to Parliament. Was committed to a body not responsible to the Parliament, and not even appointed by the crown. Okay. Earlier, this bill was actually introduced by the Prime Minister Palmerston. Okay, now it's not required for you, just to give you information. So at that time, when he introduced the Act of Good Government for India, so that bill was actually the bill was not defeated, but his government was defeated. Okay, later on, Stanley brought this bill. Okay. So, and that bill got enacted into a act. Okay. So what were the main provision? As I already told you, both these bodies were abolished and Secretary of State post was created. This was a person responsible to the British Parliament. He was being assisted by a council. Okay. He was given a council. Okay. So all white council means British members, British appointees will only be there as of now in that. And he will be responsible for the like administration in India, British administration in India. And Governor General was given additional title, that was Viceroy. That means the representative of the crown directly in India. All right. So likh lo is baat ko. So put a heading: main provisions of the Act. Main provisions of the Act. Now, this phrase was then used ke ab se in India, the entire territories and everything will be held in India and will governed by in the name of Queen, and all the territories and other revenue of India shall be received for and in the name of Her Majesty. Okay, so that means everything, and even one provision was there that not required for you, but even one provision was there that whatsoever property was held in India by any military or civilian officer will be then transferred to the crown. Okay, that property will not be their individual property, but will be the property of the crown. Okay, it was also there. So write this thing. The act laid down that India shall be governed by that India shall be governed by that India shall be pani piyo pani.
एक्सक्यूज मी सर।
हाँ जी,
सर लेकिन बोर्ड ऑफ कंट्रोल तो ये सर ब्रिटिश के लिए वो क्राउन के लिए डायरेक्टली रिस्पॉन्सिबल था ना जब ये सेटअप हुआ था।
देखो फर्क होता है, मतलब जस्ट अंडरस्टैंड दिस डिफरेंस दैट फॉर एग्जांपल यू आर अ पर्सन, नाउ यू आर like what is the meaning of responsibility? So in political science you must have heard this thing कि responsibility means, भाई साहब इधर देखो, नहीं आओगे तो हो ही, लेकिन क्या तरीका है, कब कॉलेज खत्म हुआ, अब तो 4:15 हो रहे हैं, तो 1 घंटा। हाँ हाँ चल, अब ब्लैकमेल नहीं कर, बैठ जल्दी। मेट्रो भी तो धीरे चलती है, तुम ही बैठते हो तभी मेट्रो धीरे चलती है, अदरवाइज मेट्रो थोड़ा धीरे चलती है। मेट्रो धीरे चलती है। हाँ कई बच्चे बहाना बनाते हैं, मेट्रो 40 मिनट लेट थी। अरे हम तो कभी गए ही नहीं मेट्रो में। हाँ हाँ, अरे तुम बैठते हो तो होनी है ना। हाँ हाँ बता तो रहा हूँ, तुम बैठते हो तो लेट कैसे नहीं होगी मेट्रो। सिट इन अ मैनर, आलती पालती मार के है। सुनो, नाउ द थिंग वाज, हाँ responsibility. So what is the meaning of responsibility? That you know this fact कि in the lower house, in the house of people, what happens is whichsoever political party or a coalition will be having 50% plus one majority will be forming the government. Thereby the monarch there is going to appoint that particular coalition or the political party as the executive, whereby he will appoint the prime minister. Prime minister will then send the name for appointment of council of minister. Responsibility means the parliament or the house as a whole can always hold that body executive as accountable, can always ask them questions, can always seek the replies to their questions, whatever they ask them. Sabhi chhod de bhi. So can always ask them questions, can always seek answers to whatever they want to know. That is called as responsibility. Means for whatever work they do, they will have to be responsible there. But abhi tak what was happening was the crown was taking control, was already having the control of the board of control. But what was happening, that people inside the board of control were not directly responsible. It was a channel, it was having a channel that one minister is given the responsibility there, which is in a part of an executive. They will basically guide the board of control. Board of control will then instruct the court of director, and court of director in turn, this added action will be done by the governor general in council, right? So such a chain or a hierarchy was there, but the body that is actually doing the administration, either the board of control or the court of director, they were not themselves directly responsible to the parliament. Okay, you get, like, if you are the prime minister, for example, you are Palmerston, you cannot directly ask like tum jo hai tum kaam nahi kar rahe ho, you are asking them to do, and they are not responsible to the parliament. ठीक है, so there was a hierarchy, long hierarchy. ठीक है, समझे तुम?
हाँ हाँ सर समझिए।
हाँ, so now अभी क्या लिखा? हाँ नहीं, उसमें क्या लिखा? And in the name of the Queen, the act laid down that India shall be governed by and in the name of the Queen and all the territories all the territories, yeah, territorial and other revenues of India, shall be received for and in the name of, shall be received for and in the name of shall be received for and in the name of Her Majesty. Her Majesty. Next point, right? The right to govern India, the right to govern India the right to govern India was transferred from the hands of the company, to the British Crown. To the British Crown. Full stop. It empowered the Crown to appoint. It empowered the Crown to appoint Viceroy and Governor in the presidencies. ठीक है? So presidencies they will be appointing. Next point. The Board of Control and the Court of Directors. The Board of Control and the Court of Directors was replaced by Secretary of State for India. Secretary of State for India. ठीक है? Replaced by Secretary of State for India. ठीक है? Who was to be assisted by a Council of India. Who was to be assisted by a Council of India. ठीक है? Now see, this council was to have how many members? It was to have 15 members, but there was a condition that out of these 15 members, 8 were to be directly nominated by the Crown. Okay, so how many left? 8 were to be directly nominated by the Crown, and remaining kitne bache? 7. So 7 were to be the directors. Okay, so that means this is going to be the council. Now see, ऐसे समझो, like understand like this body, this 8 जो पहले, what was earlier Board of Control, right? That was abolished. Board of Control was the complete Crown appointed body. Now they are that part. ठीक है? जो वहां खत्म हुआ. Now there was आपका Court of Director also. Now it wasn't like कि directors are completely abolished. Directors को नहीं कर सकते because it is East India Company only, and company have shareholders, and those shareholder must be given the right to administer India because ultimately जो India में administration is of East India Company only, right? अभी क्या मतलब, अब तो Crown took over, but वो company के जो लोग थे वो there are shareholders. ठीक है? तो उन shareholder को कहाँ लेके जाओगे? वो कहाँ से खत्म होंगे, है ना? So they were given a position in the council itself in form of 7 directors. Okay, understanding this point? Anyone not clear with this? Okay, write this. क्या लिखा last? Huh? Not clear. देखो, earlier there were 2 bodies, right? What's your name? Riya. मैं फिर भूल जाता हूँ, कितनी बार पूछ चुका हूँ बताओ, अब से याद रखो. ठीक है? हाँ रिया, तो सुनो तुम मेरी बात, है ना. देखो, देयर वर टू बॉडीज, राइट. वन वाज द कोर्ट ऑफ डायरेक्टर. व्हाट वाज कोर्ट ऑफ डायरेक्टर? कि whosoever is having इतना इतना शेयर इन द कंपनी, ठीक है, the shareholders, है ना, and elected shareholders, because mean from among those shareholders some will be elected and will be the part of the court of director, right. This was a commercial body, है ना, commercial. इनका काम, इनका क्या objective है? Profit, 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 है ना, not administration but majorly profit, right. One more body was board of control, right. इनका है कि they were appointed by the crown to regulate the activities of this body in India, है ना, East India's companies activities, right. Why? Because ultimately it was a monarchical system, है ना, constitutional monarchy, but monarchy, and whatsoever property any subject holds in any part of the world is held on the name of the crown itself, right. Now, who is going to regulate this body, this court of director? Board of control. Board of control was completely a political body, right. Now, these two bodies were was replaced by Secretary of State for India. Secretary of State was given now a single body. And it was that these two, both the two bodies, court of director and board of control, they were merged into a single council of India. And here, jo earlier were the court of director, were given like 7 members of the court of director, now yahan, and 8 members of the crown, which were earlier the part of board of control, will now be here, okay, in form of 8 members directly appointed by the crown. Getting the point? Okay, write this thing up. Clear area? पक्का ना? ठीक है. So now write this thing. It consisted of 15 members. It consisted of 15 members. Among them, 8 were nominated by the crown. Among them, 8 were nominated by the crown. And rest by directors. Full stop. But this body, see, now was completely a what? Advisory body, है ना? This body was ultimately a complete advisory body, है ना? What was the nature of this body? Its recommendations are not going to be binding on either Secretary of State or the वहाँ पे crown, but advisory, right? So ऐसे full stop डाल के लिखो. India Council was an advisory body. India Council was an advisory body. Full stop. And एक note डाल के लिख लो, ठीक है? Write one note in this line only, ठीक है? Right? The Secretary of State was a member of the British Cabinet. The Secretary of State was a member of the British Cabinet. Okay? So he's going to be the member of Cabinet. Okay? Is it clear to all of you? हाँ बोलो. Okay. So now write something about the Viceroy. So write the next point. Okay. So here write, the Governor General was given the title Viceroy. The Governor General was given the title Viceroy. The Governor General was given the title Viceroy or the representative of the Crown in India. Or the representative of the Crown in India. ठीक है? Yeah. ठीक है. So this is going to be the structure of administration. ऐसे लिख लो एक और बात, ठीक है? तो military control, everything all went in the hands of the crown itself, ठीक है? But this point is important. All assets and liabilities of the company, all assets and liabilities of the company, all assets and liabilities of the company in India and all its civil and defense personnel and all its civil and defense personnel was transferred to the crown. Was transferred to the crown. Okay, was transferred to the crown. All right. So now the crown had all the parts and everything, right? So, okay. अब इनको जो है one report have to be submitted by the secretary to the parliament there in Britain. Okay, every year this report will go and will contain all whatever they did in India. All right. So, but the thing was ultimately this like crown took the control, but Indians got nothing. Okay, but Indians got nothing. The way of administration got changed. Okay, but actually it became in reality even more exploitative. Okay, so you will even study in history when you will study history. So they even because this was a sepoy mutiny, right? So because it started from the sepoys itself, it started from the military itself. So that was the main reason why first they like put down a very good attack, like very strong, not good obviously, but very strong attack on military itself. They organized the military into several units. You must have heard about Jat regiment, Rajput regiment, Gorkha regiment, है ना, Madras regiment. Why they organized the Indian army into these types of regiments? The reason was that because what happened there in Meerut, okay, the Sepoy mutiny, how it started, the soldiers got united together. Okay, they got united and unitedly they refused to obey the orders of the superiors, right? So what they did was they thought that this might happen, that the Rajputs from Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh, they might revolt against us, and when we will send those people only, okay, in uniform to attack on them, they might refuse to attack. So what they did was they organized several regiments. Now any mutiny happening in Madras, they are going to send the Rajputs or any other regiment, Naga or Gorkha regiment there to attack them. If any mutiny used to happen in North India, they used to send the Madras regiments. Okay, like this, they basically reformed the army also. Okay, several things they did. You will study in history in the chapter of the revolt of 1857, that thing. Okay. Coming on to next, there was a proclamation also, which was not even having the backing of any statute, but it was a crown's proclamation. Now, in that proclamation, what the queen proclaimed was, she stated that from now onwards, like, acha, one story, let me tell you. What was the reason behind the start of Sepoy mutiny? It were 2 to 3 instant reasons, okay? Because there was a rumor, whether it was a rumor or it was a reality, we don't know and we can't even tell. Because we don't have British record hai us samay ke to, hai na, and British records are all forced only, hai na. So now there were two things, that pig and cow's fat is being used for the greased Enfield rifles, that they were like, and pig is banned for Muslims and cow is sacred for Hindus. So both they refused, and this was seen as an interference in the religion of people. Okay. Another thing was, there was a rumor that the animals' bone dust is being used in atta. Okay, that is being given to the soldiers. That was also a hurt of the religious sentiments. It was a prevalent notion in Hindus that crossing 7 seas, because at that time Sindh was 7 sea for Indians. Okay, Sindh, Afghanistan, obviously it was 7 sea. Even today it's not a part of India. At that time, it was in the notion of Hindus that crossing 7 sea, by crossing 7 sea, you will lose your religion. Okay. And Indians were deliberately posted to Afghanistan. They were deliberately posted to Sindh. They were deliberately posted to Burma, right? So now by the Queen proclamation, the first thing that Queen stated was, from now onwards, 2 things will happen. One will be the association of Indians in the administration of Britishers. Second will be non-interference in the religious affairs. Okay, getting the point. They abolished sati, but it was not right for Indians because Indians perceived it as a interference in their religious practices. right? So ultimately they declared that we are not going to interfere in the religion of Indians. All right. One thing, this thing happened. Now after that, what was stated by the Queen's proclamation was that they assured that they do not have any desire furthermore to expand. Now their desire is not annexationist. Okay. Now they are not going to carry forward with the annexationist policies which they used to adopt earlier. All right. So this was also there. Even it was stated by the Queen Victoria's proclamation that all Indians, irrespective of any religion, caste, or sex, will not be discriminated. Okay. No, sex wasn't there. I think sex wasn't there. Okay. But religion, race, or caste. So they will not be discriminated on the basis of religion, race, or caste. Okay. So this was also stated by the Queen Victoria's proclamation. These things were there. Okay. But nothing happened in reality. Okay. Nothing happened in reality. Okay. इससे 50 साल कब होंगे? 50 for 58 50 साल 1909 I think, right? हाँ, किसी की मैथ्स स्ट्रांग है? 50 ईयर कब कंप्लीट हुए? 58 में दिस प्रोक्लेमेशन केम 8 में ना. हाँ, तो आफ्टर 50 ईयर इन 1909 देन फॉर्मली, जो मैंने आपको बताया, मॉर्ले मिंटो रिफॉर्म केम and some sort of on ground real representation was then given to the, and this Morley Minto reform even came on the occasion of the 50th year of Queen Victoria's proclamation, right? So this thing then happened. All right. So yes, write this thing, write heading. Proclamation of the Queen. Right. The proclamation of the Queen. The proclamation of the Queen, first point, which declared the assumption of the government of India, which declared the assumption of the government of India. So from now onwards, we will use this term government of India. Okay. Government of India directly by the crown. Directly by the crown. As the, yeah, directly by the crown as the mat likho, क्योंकि because they stated marks the beginning of a new era. Marks the beginning of a new era in the history of India. Marks the beginning of a new era in the history of India. Okay, so it was a new beginning in the history of India. All right. So as stated by Queen herself, है ना? So write the next point. The administration, या फिर continuation ही हो गया, ठीक है? हटा दो, छोड़ो, बेवजह रिपीटेशन है ना? Same thing, because the administration will now be carried forward. अरे ठीक है, लिख लो यार. The administration of the East India Company. अच्छा छोड़ो फिर. अरे यार कितने नखरे हो आज तुम लोग यार. एक आध पॉइंट काट वाट देते तो कोई दिक्कत. मैं तुम्हारे लिए बोला यार, मैं क्या रिपीट करवा दूं, है ना? तुम्हारे लिए मैं लिखना पड़े बच्चों को, बेचारों को. हाँ, शैतान. चलो लिखो, क्या लिखवा रहा था? हाँ, लॉर्ड कैनिंग. लॉर्ड कैनिंग, comma, the Governor General of India was designated the Viceroy. The Governor General of India was designated the Viceroy, as well as Crown's representative in India. As well as Crown's representative in India. Okay, as well as Crown's representative in India. ठीक है. Next point. It assured that the Crown had no desire. The Crown had no desire to extend its possessions, its territorial possessions, yeah, possessions in India. Its territorial possessions in India, and would respect the rights and honors of all rulers. Respect the rights and honors of all rulers and would respect the rights, क्या लिखा? हाँ, rights and honors of all rulers as it respects its own, rights and honor. एक याद, do you know, remember वो किसके, डलहौजी की doctrine of lapse. So what was it? It was that if a king is not having biological son, the personal property of the father might be transferred to the adopted son, but not the umpire, या not the उसका जो है kingdom. Okay, but that was abolished now. ठीक है, तो ऐसे लिख लो. Next point. Native rulers were permitted to adopt. Native rulers were permitted to adopt. Native rulers were permitted to adopt any child as their natural heir. Any child as their natural heir मत लिख देना, heir बोलते हैं इसको, HEIR है, ठीक है, as their heir, ठीक है, in absence of a child. Next point. It promised non-interference. It promised non-interference. It promised non-interference into the religious affairs of the people of India. Into the religious affairs of the people of India. And would respect ancient traditional beliefs and faiths. And would respect ancient Indian traditions and faiths. Ancient Indian traditions, beliefs and faiths. Okay. Next point likho. All Indians without any discrimination of, all Indians without any discrimination of, all Indians without any discrimination of race, caste and religion. Race, caste and religion would be provided equal opportunities, would be provided equal opportunities to get government jobs, to get government jobs according to their respective education, according to their respective education, capability and loyalty. according to their respective education, capability, and loyalty. Okay. ठीक है. So there were several criticisms also, okay, and even not important for writing, but even whosoever were convicted of any offense committed during the time of the Sepoy Mutiny, they were pardoned, okay. So उनको ना pardon कर दिया गया था जो भी responsible थे उस time mutiny के time पर, तो were convicted of any offense, okay. There were several criticisms for this, okay. So this proclamation remained the basis for the administration of crown in India for almost next 60 years, because ultimately major things changed in 1919. Okay. I told you some sort of real representation was given in 1909. Okay. But then Montague-Chelmsford reform were thoda or remarkable. Okay. So moving ahead, it's not required for you all to write criticism for these acts, because criticism majorly was ek ka chahiye 1935. Okay. So criticism is only required for you all for 1935, because that was ultimately the base for the Constitution of India. Okay. Now abhi tak to it was in sequence. ठीक है. So now came the Indian Councils Act of 1861. So put a heading to this. ठीक है. वो एक यार एक सेकेंड, एक ना इसके पीछे एक मूवमेंट था, क्रिश्चियन मूवमेंट. एक सेकेंड, क्रिश्चियन मूवमेंट नहीं, ऐसा ही कुछ था. हाँ, चार्टिस्ट मूवमेंट. हाँ, चार्टिस्ट मूवमेंट था. सो रीजन बिहाइंड क्या हो रहा है. हाँ, तो मेरे से पूछा करो ना, फिर आप आपस में बातें करते हो, आपस में बोलेगा नहीं कोई. ठीक है, सुनो क्या बता रहा था. चार्टिस्ट, वो उधर पे in Britain, like people were facing hunger, and it was a mass agitation movement, right? That was going on in Britain itself. All right. So which compelled the government there to bring the People's Act of 1838. So even that Chartist movement had a very great influence there in India also. Okay. Because itna bada movement is going on there in England. Now something have to be done. Okay. Something has to be done. Even Indians were also not satisfied with whatever reforms were introduced, because see, on ground no reform was introduced by the Act of 1858. Okay, on ground there was no reform, but rather on paper some assurances were given. But those assurances, जो है, अच्छा, reform was only for the government. Okay, only for the administration. No reform for inclusion of people, no reform actually that impacted the people, okay, that satisfies the demands of Indians. There was no as such reform, okay. Yeah, I do understand until 1861 there was no Congress, okay, there was no Indian National Congress, because Indian National Congress ultimately got formed in 1885, okay. But since there were other small movements that were going on, you will study in your spectrum before the chapter of 1857 that how several movements were going on. Okay. So due to these circumstances and unfulfilled demands of Indians, this later on this Indian Councils Act came. All right. Now what this act did. So this act see, revolt of 1857 was actually an eye-opener for the British government. It showed the ill sides of the British administration there in India. After which, even once, आपको पता है, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan also quoted one thing. Let me quote his statement. He said that had there been a native of Hindustan in the same legislative council, the people would have never fallen into such error. According to him, if any Indian was there earlier in the council from where the laws were made, okay, in Governor Generals and Council, so such kind of revolt would have never happened. ठीक है? क्यों? Because Indian grievance was centered around this thing only, that why are we not a part of British administration in India? See, you will not see, or it is, I also like don't feel very good in saying this, but a major difference between these pre-constitutional acts and the Constitution of India, the major difference is actually the faces. Why we feel this constitution as ours? Because it allows in every eligibility criteria, in president's eligibility criteria, qualifications, in governor's qualification, in council of members qualification, one clause was added, that was must be a citizen of India. And that was the major change that happened. Okay? Otherwise, telling you very honestly, 1935 Act was more federal as compared to the Constitution of India. Okay? So here, the grievance of Indians was, why are we not there? The slogan of the French Revolution of 1789 was vote equal, liberty, equality, fraternity, but one major war cry of that was no taxation without representation. That inspired us, na? That inspired us. They stated कि भैया, we are not going to pay you tax until you are not giving us the representation to represent ourselves. Here also that thing influenced, we started demanding inclusion, inclusion and inclusion. But still no result. Okay. Ultimately what happened, what were the major provisions of this? It changed the Viceroy's Executive Council. It added certain members. Okay. And like in the Secretary of State's Council also, 3 members were to be like, in the Viceroy's Council, 3 members were to be appointed by the Secretary of State for India. Okay. And some law members were added and some shuffling was there in the council itself. Okay. In Viceroy and Secretary of State's Council. Otherwise, no inclusion as such happened. Okay. So write this thing, write intro to this act. Right, the Act of 1858 did not make any change in the system of government of India. The Act of 1858 did not make any change. Did not make any change in the system of government in India. Next point. The Chartist, Chartist, Chartist movement was influential in England. Movement was influential in England. And as a result, there was a natural British instinct. And as a result, there was a natural British instinct for free and democratic government. Natural British instinct for free and democratic government. Instinct. क्या हुआ अनुष्का? क्या छूट गया? There was a natural British instinct for free and democratic government. ठीक है. So several days direct communication. नहीं लिखो मत, लिखो नहीं. So several days direct communication happened between the government there in Britain and the home government in India, as a result of which this Indian Councils Act of 1861 was passed. Okay. So Right? Next, अभी ऐसे कोई heading नहीं. So write the next point. It was felt that Indians were not given chance. It was felt that Indians were not given chance in the administration of the government. Indians were not given chance in the administration of the government. And even the revolt of 1857 was an eye opener for the British government. Was an eye opener for the British government. Was an eye opener for the British government. Okay. So full stop डाल के लिख लो. The British government also thought that one of the reason for the revolt of 1857 was due to their misrule. And what was one major defect was कि like आपको पता है कि Macaulay also drafted the आपका है ना IPC. So there was major emphasis on bringing uniformity in administration. This did not serve the local provinces, because ultimately what was happening was, due to the like more urge for bringing uniformity in the administration, the local grievances of the people at the local level were still remained unaddressed. They were not being addressed, right? And ultimately those grievances were still pending. ठीक है? So this also was another reason. ठीक है? तो ऐसे लिख लो. Though it aimed at the uniformity of law in the whole country, it did not serve the local conditions of the provinces. It did not serve the local conditions of the provinces. Okay? So the local conditions of the provinces still remained unaddressed. Okay? So ऐसे लिख लो, hence it was defective. तुम यार पॉइंट नहीं डालते हो क्या? डालते हो ना? हाँ, देख नहीं पता चल रहा था. चलो. So लिख लो इसके भी provisions of the act. First provision, right? Changes were made in the Viceroy's Executive Council. So in the Viceroy's Executive Council में total 5 members are going to be there, out of which 3 will be appointed by the Secretary of State. All right. So लिख लो इसको. There were 5 members to be in the council. And of them, 3 members were to be appointed by the Secretary of State for India. 3 members were to be appointed by the Secretary of State for India. Clear? Is it clear to all of you? Okay. So, और जो 2 members होंगे, so one was the legal member and another one was the finance member. Okay. So ऐसे लिख लो इस बात को भी, the remaining member, comma, legal member and finance member. The remaining member, comma, the legal member and the finance member. तुम लिख क्यों नहीं रहे हो? लिख लिया? तो बड़े फास्ट हो यार तुम. अभी जो बताया मैंने फाइनेंस मेंबर वाला. अरे बहुत बढ़िया. So finance member were to be appointed by the crown. Were to be appointed by the crown. ठीक है. तो ऐसे उसमें भी कुछ क्राइटेरिया थी कि 5 साल फॉर 5 years इफ यू आर अ टीचर, जो बोलते हैं ना फैकल्टी एट द स्कॉटलैंड कॉलेज और ये वो, और मतलब तुमने अगर जो है एक बैरिस्टर होने चाहिए या तो ब्रिटेन से, आयरलैंड से, 5 साल तक तुमने स्कॉटलैंड में पढ़ाया हो, then only you will be able to be appointed as the law minister and all. ठीक है. So वो सब था, छोड़ो वो सब. ठीक है. अच्छा. Now वो आपने सुना है पोर्टफोलियो सिस्टम. व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ पोर्टफोलियो सिस्टम? हाँ, मिनिस्ट्रीज ही नहीं बट रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज को, है ना. सो रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज टू बी डिवाइडेड. सो हु इंट्रोड्यूस्ड इट इन इंडिया? कैनिंग, है ना. सो एट दिस स्टेज हियर इन दिस एक्ट ओनली इट वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड. ओके. सो राइट द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट. लॉर्ड कैनिंग introduced the portfolio system. ठीक है. Is it clear? And now see, by this act, the council, the Viceroy's council was even given the legislative work. They can legislate. आ रही बात समझ में? So लिख लो इस बात को भी. The act empowered the council. The act empowered the council to legislate on all subjects. Empowered the council to legislate on all subjects concerning all persons and courts in British India. Concerning all subjects, yeah, persons लिख लो, all persons and courts in British India. And every bill passed by it, and every bill passed by it required the assent of the Viceroy. Required the assent of the Viceroy to become an act. Assent of the Viceroy to become an act. ठीक है. तो अभी देखो, नाउ यू नो, अभी वाइसरॉय में कितने मेंबर हैं काउंसिल में? 5 हैं. नाउ अंडरस्टैंड वन थिंग. नाउ हियर इट इज वाइसरॉय. नाउ वाइसरॉय की अपनी क्या है? It has council, right? So it is the council of Viceroy. Now by this act what happened was, by this act the functions were divided into 2, right? It were divided into 2. One was legislative function, another was executive function. Now it was stated that from now onwards, after 1961, this council of Viceroy, is not just eligible for the executive task, but is also eligible for the legislative task. For the executive task, this council is having 3 plus 2 members. Kitne? 3 plus 2 members. From these two, one is going to be the law member and another is going to be the finance member, right? Now, for this task, when this same body will be doing the legislative task, that means making laws, right? These 5 members will be there, ठीक है? But additionally, 6 to 12 members also have to be included while like exercising the legislative task, and these 6 to 12 members will be holding the office for the term of 2 years. Got the point? लिख लो इस बात को. The next point. For the purpose of legislation, for the purpose of legislation, for legislation, comma, the Viceroy's Executive Council, the Viceroy's Executive Council was expanded by the addition of, the Viceroy's Executive Council was expanded by the addition of not less than, by the addition of not less than 6 and not more than 12 members. ठीक है? Who would be nominated by the Governor General? ठीक है? Who would be nominated by the Governor General? Who's the Governor General? हाँ, है ना? Nominated by the Governor General and would hold office for 2 years. And would hold office for 2 years. ठीक है? Is it clear? Okay, very important. Put a star before this, because here the executive and the legislative functions were completely separated. Okay. Now legislators were also included. These are whom? They are the legislators. Okay. So, and इसमें one more thing was added. ठीक है. So, इसमें भी star करके लिखो. In this point only you can write this. लिखो. At least half of the additional members were to be non-officials. अब देखो, ये था मतलब ऑब्वियसली जो मैंने बताया टोकन है ना ऑफ इंडियन रिप्रेजेंटेशन. दैट मींस इसमें नाउ सी व्हाट आर द like what is the task of executive? Responsibility. In parliamentary system, executive is responsible to the legislature, but now this was the another separate body and this was another separate body. So this body wherein 6 to 12 members were to be appointed by the Governor General, they, out of these total legislators only, half of them were to be non-officials. What is the meaning of non-official? Who are not the part of the official British administration. Now the thing is, who are not a part of the official British administration were to be from outside the British government. This was a token, not even explicitly mentioning Indians, but this was a token representation that was given to Indians without any power, right? So this was just a token kind of ऐसे लिख लो bracket में, non-official members were to be the members who were not the part of official British administration, not a part of the official British administration, and by this a token Indian representation was introduced. A token Indian representation was introduced. Now see what kind of rule were they doing? They themselves knew this. How? By this same act, what they did was they gave a token representation to Indians. But by this same act, what they did was they gave the Governor General the power to issue ordinances. See what kind of rule they were doing ki bhaiya, on one side they are expanding the legislative work of the Viceroy's Council, but on the other hand they knew that now they knew that this entire body is now going to have the task of making laws, and some time might come that this person might not be satisfied by what this council is doing. For that they gave the Governor General what? Ordinances. समझ रहे हो? And the discovery of India, which was written by Jawaharlal Nehru in the very first page of it, in the initial pages of it, you might read one thing that he describes the situation of India, that how in reality every law was being made by the Governor General using its ordinance making powers, and how the situation was really haunting in India. Okay. So this happened in this act. Okay, write this thing, right? The act empowered the Governor General to frame ordinances in cases of emergency, which were to remain valid as law for 6 months. Which were to remain valid as law for 6 months. Unless cancelled by the Secretary of State in Council, by the Secretary of State in Council, or by the Legislative Council at the center. So this thing happened. Now you can even.
Sir, please repeat the last line.
क्या था last line में? So as a law for 6 months, unless cancelled by the Secretary of State in Council or by the Legislative Council at the center. ठीक है? हाँ, क्लियर है तुम्हें भी जिन्होंने पूछा? So now the thing was कि अब जो है तुम्हें शैडो दिख रही है इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में? अकॉर्डिंग टू द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिया कितने टाइम तक फर्स्ट मीटिंग से सर्वाइव करेगा ऑर्डिनेंस? 6 weeks. और इस समय कितना था? 6 months। शैडो दिख रही है? शैडो तो इसीलिए पढ़ाया जाता है ना पॉलिटी की क्लासेस में फ्रॉम द इनिशियल, ठीक है। यू कैन सी द शैडो ऑफ इट, ओके। सो कोई नहीं, ठीक है। तो उसमें भी बॉम्बे और मद्रास वाली की जो प्रोविंशियल काउंसिल्स थी उनको भी 4 से 8 कर दिया गया, लिख लो इस बात को भी। सो राइट, एंड इवन दो आपका नॉर्थ वेस्ट और पंजाब में क्रिएट की गई, ठीक है, आपका प्रोविंसेस, और यहाँ वाले को बढ़ा दिया गया। सो नेक्स्ट पॉइंट, राइट, द गवर्नर जनरल was empowered to create legislative councils, was empowered to create legislative councils in northwest and Punjab, in northwest and Punjab, and the act provided for the enlargement of, and the act provided for the enlargement of, and the act provided for the enlargement of the Executive Council of Madras and Bombay, the Executive Council of Madras and Bombay, Executive Council of Madras and Bombay, by the addition of one Advocate General, by the addition of one Advocate General. तो स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर आज भी तो बोलते हैं ना, व्हाट इज यूनियन एग्जीक्यूटिव का फुल फॉर्म क्या है? प्रेसिडेंट, आपका प्राइम मिनिस्टर, काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर, ठीक है, और यहां पर कौन है आपके सेंटर पे? अटॉर्नी जनरल। स्टेट में वही क्या है? एडवोकेट्स जनरल, ठीक है। वहां पर क्या है? कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल हेड ऑफ एवरी स्टेट इज गवर्नर, बट ऑल्सो कौन है एक साथ में? एडवोकेट जनरल। वो यही क्रिएट किए गए थे, ठीक है। तो ऐसे लिख लो, क्या लिखा लास्ट? एडवोकेट्स जनरल एंड 4 to 8 members for legislative purposes, and 4 to 8 members for legislative purposes. और ऐसे लिख लो, एंड द प्रोविंशियल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल, एंड द प्रोविंशियल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल could make law for the good government of the province, could make laws for the good government of province, but required assent of governor general. ठीक है,
एक बार लास्ट वाली लाइन रिपीट कर दो।
but could require the assent of the governor general. इतना ही है और भी? सुप्रिया, इतना और बताऊं क्या? पिछली और भी लाइन एक।
नहीं सर, हो गया।
ओके ओके, ठीक है।
Excuse me, sir.
हाँ बोलिए।
सर ये गवर्नर जनरल भी तो वॉइस रॉय था।
हाँ हाँ, मैं कब मना कर रहा हूँ?
तो सर वॉइस रॉय अच्छा अपनी काउंसिल वही खुद चूज करता था।
अरे हाँ, क्या?
सर वाइस रॉय ही अपनी लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल
हाँ
चूज
हाँ
करता
हाँ
था।
हाँ 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 हाँ, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, ठीक है, बिल्कुल। वो तो एक बस टाइटल था उनका, है ना, वाइस रॉय वो टाइटल दिखाने के लिए कि अब ये कहाँ के रिप्रेजेंटेटिव है, कंपनी वंपनी के नहीं, क्राउन के, ठीक है।
ओके सर।
हाँ, ऐसा कोई डिस्टिंक्शन नहीं था। अभी जैसे यूनियन लिस्ट, स्टेट लिस्ट है, तो ऐसा कोई डिस्टिंक्शन तो था नहीं, बट जनरली करेंसी वरेंसी के मैटर्स को माना जाता था एज अ यूनियन सब्जेक्ट, ठीक है। इसके बाद में लिख लो फटाफट हेडिंग डाल के, इंडियन काउंसिल्स एक्ट 1892, इंडियन काउंसिल्स एक्ट 1892। लिख ले लिख ले, तो कहाँ खो जाता है जब बताता हूं एक बात। ठीक है, हाँ ठीक है सर, चलो मिलते हैं, लेट्स मीट इन द नेक्स्ट क्लास, ओके, अंटिल देन बाय बाय एवरीवन, टेक केयर।
थैंक यू सर।
Thank you, sir.
वेलकम।